Hi everyone, this is Brittnee Bond and welcome back to the podcast. Today I am reporting live from Switzerland, which is very beautiful and the air is so clean and it's like sunny and actually pretty warm here compared to what I thought it was going to be. I have a huge story to share with you of what's happening recently in my life. And what I'm very excited to share with you today, specifically in this podcast, is how to have safe sex from an emotional, energetic, and biological standpoint. All of that might sound like, what? What is she talking about? But we're going to go into it. This podcast is inspired by the fact that I thought I was pregnant very recently. That's a whole story I will go into in this podcast. And it really made me look at this from these different perspectives, like from an emotional perspective, what does it mean to have sex with someone? From a psychological perspective, like does it feel safe to have sex with this person? And also from a biological standpoint, like when you think you're about to have a child with this person, what does that actually mean? And how does your body process that? So let's dive right into the episode. Oh, I just laugh because my life is beautiful and very dramatic all at once. I had a friend recently say to me, like, Brittnee, do you realize that your life is just like, there's a lot of things happening all the time? And I said to him, yeah, but that's, I mean, it makes for a good story, right? Like the theme, the message that I have been saying to myself recently over and over again is stay in your center. Because I realize that when you up-level your life, you are doing your best to expand, right? Like you want to go do your life at a higher and higher level. But in order to expand, you have to be able to deal with that expansion. And with that expansion sometimes comes uncomfortable situations, which could definitely throw you out of your center. And this is the specific one that I had recently where I thought I maybe was pregnant, was definitely one of these moments where I thought, okay, is this going to be a moment where Brittnee freaks out, or is she going to stay in her center? And then I was able to stay in my center, one, because I had gone through all the things that I am about to teach you about what creates safety in these situations. I had already done all of the prep work within the dynamic between me and the person I was making love with. So whether me ended up being pregnant or not, it was okay because I had created the safety emotionally, energetically, and in my body for the situation to happen. Of course, we didn't expect this to happen, but the prep work had been started so that it was a safe situation. And it made me realize that I don't think a lot of people do this. A lot of the things that I do in my life happens for me intuitively. Yes, I minored in psychology in university. I also have a lot of somatic training, trauma awareness training. But when it comes to interpersonal relationships, like romantic relationships, a lot of the things that I do is because I need to create safety within my own body. But what I realize is a lot of people don't have these tools. So this is what I'm going to share with you today. First off, I think it's really important to look at what happens between two people when they make love from an emotional and a biological standpoint. The spiritual level is a whole other thing, which maybe I won't get into this podcast, dive into in this podcast because it's like a whole other subject. But let's go into, from an emotional standpoint, what happens when two people make love. And in this podcast, I'm specifically going to talk about male and female dynamics. If you're in a same-sex relationship or dynamic, you can take, when I talk about the man, as whoever's leading in their masculine energy, and when I talk about the female, the woman, whoever's leading in their feminine energy. And the reason why you can do that is because everything has to have a balanced polarity. So even if you're in a same-sex dynamic, there's going to be someone who is more of leading in their masculine energy and someone in their feminine energy, because there needs to be a balance in order for there to be an attraction. Okay, so let's dive right in. I made some notes, so I'm going to share some of these with you. When a woman makes love with a man, from an emotional standpoint, well, let's talk about first from a biological standpoint. Actually, let's take this back. I retract what I just said. From a biological standpoint, when a woman makes love with a man, it's her body asking if this man, so literally subconsciously what's happening in her body is asking, can this man, if we were to have a child, can this man be the father of my child? So from a biological standpoint, as humans, we are driven to procreate. And whether you are a, free-thinking liberal woman, and where you have no intention to make a baby with this person that you're making love with, you still, from a body standpoint, somatically and in your nervous system, there is still this biological response that happens, especially as you get into your 30s, where your body is asking, like, could this person potentially be the father of my children? And if from a biological standpoint, I'm talking about the sensations happening in your body, the somatic experiencing that you're feeling in your body. And a lot of times this is subconscious. A lot of times this is not from your conscious reality. So consciously you could say, oh yeah, this guy is great, he's amazing. But in your body is going to be doing a whole other calculation of whether this person could potentially be the father of your children, because biologically in your body, this is the opportunity that is happening when you make love. And this is why when a lot of women make love, they have what we call an attachment, an energetic attachment that happens. And yes, this is emotional, which I'll go into in a moment, but we're just talking from a purely biological perspective, like literally just like our bodies connecting. Are we going to make a baby? And this is what happens. So if a woman doesn't feel, if the answer in her body is no, I don't feel like this man is a good person to make a baby with, and you still have sex with this person, you still make love with this person, then she could feel insecure in the dynamic with him. And this is where the emotional reality starts to kick in. So a lot of times from a somatic experiencing, which means the sensations happening in our bodies, these things are hardwired in us, and a lot of this is happening subconsciously. So consciously what starts showing up is the emotional reaction that the woman has to the situation. So emotionally, she could, of course, enjoy the pleasure that comes with the lovemaking, but afterwards, she could start feeling like she needs more security. And in a lot of psychology, we talk about this means emotional containment. So this means like literally, energetically, emotionally, is this man a safe man for her to unfold into emotionally? But when we connect it with a biological response of literally subconsciously her body is asking, could this person be the father of my children? This adds a whole other layer, because sometimes men will experience a woman starting to, you could say, freak out or get more emotional after making love about what does it mean. And so, but when a man starts to understand that, oh, her body is actually just wanting safety and wanting to make sure that if something happens, then this is a safe place to unfold into and a safe place to land. And what happens if a woman feels unsafe in this is that emotionally she will start stepping into her masculine energy, because basically from a feminine perspective, the survival mechanism when a woman feels like potentially I could have a child right now is the woman starts to needing, basically her survival of the child becomes the most important thing. And it's really interesting, everything I'm saying right now, because a lot of this, almost all of this is happening subconsciously. But when I say it to you, you'll start recognizing it consciously in your dynamics. So if she feels insecure, she could step into her masculine energy. And what that looks like is after making love with a guy, she could start asking him, what are your intentions here? Like, what are we doing? What does this mean? And express desire for more consistency within the dynamic. So like she's basically asking him to start showing up for her more, so that biologically and emotionally she can feel safe that, oh, this person could be the father of my children, or could be a man that can show up for me. And also she will attempt to create clarity between what does their relationship mean for her. So is this just a one night stand? Are they just friends? Does this person want to have a long-term relationship with her? And for a man to receive all of this energy right after making love, or like shortly after, as a consequence to them having sex, right? This can feel in his body it can feel overwhelming, honestly. And it can feel like a lot of contraction in his body. He can feel emotionally contracted and want to emotionally pull away, because it feels like suddenly there is a lot of responsibility being asked of him and a lot of pressure. And if he's not in the same, we're going to go into how it feels for a man when he makes love, but I'm just saying that this initial reaction, it's understandable that a man would feel contraction with suddenly having all of these questions given to him right after he made love. And I'm not saying this happens right after you make love with someone, but it's usually the natural consequence. And a lot of times women will try and act like they're easygoing, or they'll try and act like that they don't have all of these needs, which are natural, biological, emotional needs that a woman has when she makes love with someone. So a woman will sometimes suppress these needs and be, in English we call it the cool girl, like someone who is just easygoing and going with the flow. But if you are suppressing any emotions, this will come out later in a very negative way. So it's better to address these. And what I'm going to teach you is the tools to address all of these concerns, all of these needs before you make love with someone. So that when you make love with someone, everything's in place for you to feel safe all the way through the rest of the journey. So let's go and speak to how it feels to be a man in these situations. I've talked to a lot of men. I am not a man in this timeline, in this lifetime, but I've had a lot of male partners, and I also coach men on these things. So what I'm speaking to right now is from their experience that they have shared with me. So I'm not trying to represent any men in this situation, but what they have told me is that because society has very few outlets for men to share their emotions, so usually it's aggression. So this can be through actual physical aggression, or through monitoring or following aggressive sports. There is some outlet for aggression, which is a socially acceptable way for a man to feel his feelings. And the other outlet for a man to feel his feelings is to not feel them and to suppress his feelings. And then the third outlet that is socially acceptable for a man to feel his feelings in today's modern society is through sex. So for a man to feel his feelings, sex has become one of the few outlets where men can experience tenderness, softness, where they can feel alive fully in their bodies, most men are living from their head up. So they're experiencing reality from the perspective of their mind. And for all of us humans, we are meant to experience reality from the perspective of our full body experiencing. That's what it means to have, when we talk about somatic experiencing, it means literally orientating, like experiencing reality through the sensations happening in your body. And a huge part of the sensations happening in your body are your emotions. So for a man to not be able to, or not feel safe to feel his emotions on the daily reality, it's understandable why they would crave these outlets to feel safe, to feel fully alive, that anything that they're feeling in that moment is okay and acceptable. And for most men, one of the few outlets for this is through sex. And so it makes sense that they would want to have sex, because they literally just want to feel alive. They want to feel connected and alive, and that they can feel their feelings in their body. And it's interesting for me, because I think about, like, wow, for many men in today's world, like having sex is almost like a therapy session. It's like them going to therapy, because it's like a safe place for them to just drop in. And also to have any kind of emotional release that they need. So a lot of men, they will and they might not even feel safe to share it or to express it completely while they're making love, but they'll definitely be able to feel it. And so for most men that go through the world today, they don't have a safe space to feel their feelings. And so it makes sense that they crave sex. And also it almost becomes this obsessive impulse for them to have an emotional release through sex. And so when you think of it from that perspective, no wonder a lot of men are addicted to porn today. No wonder a lot of men are addicted to the chase of attaining sexual pleasure, because for them it's not even about the pleasure, it's about the feeling anything, feeling alive, feeling like they're human, feeling like they can feel their feelings, just feeling. And so from this perspective, it really makes me understand why men are so sex orientated today. Because I am Brittnee Bond, am a super sexual being, but it comes from a different place. It comes from a place of merging my soul with someone and experiencing pleasure and also having somatic, emotional releases. It's all of the things. But I can really feel for men today, if they don't have this opportunity to feel their feelings, like, of course they would want to be able to do this through sex. There's also a biological thing that I think it needs to be addressed when it comes to the masculine energy today, or from men, is that men are driven from a biological standpoint to literally plant their seed in women. So we have to really look at this all from an evolutionary perspective. That from an evolutionary perspective, men and women, in order for consciousness to evolve, for us to evolve as a human species, we are, from an evolutionary biological perspective, encouraged to procreate. And for the men's perspective, for a man's perspective in this orientation, is for them to have as much sex and basically make as many babies as possible. So like from purely a biological standpoint, this is like a huge part of what drives them. And I'm not saying that this is a negative thing. I think this is just like something that we need to like fully come into our consciousness about as a human species, and that there's nothing wrong with this. And if this is no longer in our subconscious, and when we talk about something in our subconscious, I talk about in our shadow, because it's like you can't really see it. But when we bring it to light, we can start to understand, oh, okay, this is just a normal thing. So how do we work with this? How do we make this a positive thing? So I just shared with you like all of the things that I feel like is important to address, of like what's actually happening when two people make love. So there is the emotional aspect, and there's also the biological aspect. So how do we do this in a way that is positive? How do we do this in a way where we are actually creating safety in our bodies, and also creating a safe space for each other to connect and to process things and to evolve? Yeah, of course, if we want to make babies, that's also okay. So for a woman, I'll speak from the woman's perspective. In order for a woman to feel safe emotionally with a man, in order to make love with him, like I'm saying, like safe all the way through. So that also means the after effects of what it means to make a baby, to make love with someone. Not make a baby, but the potential of making a baby with someone is what every woman experiences when she makes love. So if you don't realize this is really important, that your body is literally every single time you make love with a man asking, could this person potentially be the father of my child? And if he was, what would that mean for me? Would it be safe? It's really important to allow ourselves to consciously recognize these things, so then we can start acting from a conscious place when we are moving through the world and choosing to connect with people. So for a woman, in order for her to feel safe with a man, she needs to have consistent action over time, that this man is going to show up for her and is a safe person for her. So the longer a woman waits to have sex, she gets to see whether he is consistent with her in his using his energy to protect and provide for her. And so I wrote down, sorry, I'm looking at my notes. So I wrote down some questions, and a question that you could ask yourself if you're a woman in the situation, and then I'm going to speak to the men, is, does he use his energy to protect and provide for me? How does he make me feel emotionally and energetically? So like, this is the second question I just said is really important. How does he make me feel emotionally and energetically? The reason why this is really important is that sometimes we have trauma bonding with people where they remind us of our parent that we had a hard time with growing up, whatever parent that was, even if it was someone of energetically, this person reminds us of someone that we needed to heal trauma with. And so we can be attracted to a partner because we want to heal a past trauma. If that is happening, this is what we call trauma bonding. This is not a healthy foundation to base a full relationship on. Of course, every relationship is going to bring up our trauma and our shadows because they want to be healed. So I'm not saying that just because you have a fight with your partner or this person reminds you of your father or your mother, that you should just run away from them. There's a healthy balance in the middle of this because every partnership is an opportunity for us to heal what is happening with us from our childhood. Any negative beliefs that we have or anything that we want to be healed. The way that this is healthy is that if you feel in your body energetically safe and physically safe around this person. So you can say to yourself, yes, this person is super attractive. Like from a value system, we have the same values and, blah, blah, blah. There can be lots of lists of why on paper this person is a good match for you as a partner. But do you feel emotionally safe with them? Do you feel energetically safe with them? In your body, do you feel grounded and happy around them? Because that's the foundation to build a healthy partnership on. And of course, if you're making love with someone and you're having casual sex, you can still have a healthy relationship with this person, even if it's as lovers or as friends. And still you would want to ask yourself, do I feel safe around this person? Because your mind can be playing tricks on you by making you feel like this person is a good person to engage with, and your body is always going to tell you the truth. Your body will always tell you whether this person is safe or not because of how you feel around them. If when you are around them, you feel anxious or activated or triggered, or even sometimes what people call butterflies in their stomach is actually what we would consider. There's a fine line between healthy excitement for someone and anxious excitement for someone. If it's leaning more towards the anxious, it's usually a trauma bond. And like I was saying before, even when you feel safe with someone, you're still going to have situations where this person could activate you or trigger you. But that's okay if the foundation is safety with this person. If after the trigger you can talk about it and you come back to a safe foundation and a feeling good and grounded with each other. If you don't feel that, and then you get activated and triggered, you're going to spin out and it's going to be emotional and psychological chaos. And this is what we call a toxic relationship. So really ask yourself, as a woman, or talking to the women here, do I feel emotionally, energetically safe around this person? And do I have a calm nervous system around this person? And I want to speak to the men here. This is something that is probably going to be, I don't know, it can be triggering for some men. I've had it where in today's society, men, I want to speak to you that you already are doing so much, most of you. You are doing the best you can to show up in a lifetime where, as a healthy masculine, in a lifetime where there is not that many displays of what it means to be a healthy masculine. So it's like you were asked to play a role where no one is showing you how to do it and there's no manual. So I want to tell you that you are doing a good job. If you are even listening to this podcast and you're attempting to become a man that is, what we would consider a divine masculine, which just means someone who is doing their best to show up as their authentic self and doing their best to become a better person. This is all we can ask of anyone in this lifetime. And from an emotional and psychological perspective, as a man, this is what many men tell me. So I'm sharing this with you from based on research, is that the more a man waits to have sex with a woman, the more that she waits and the more that a man waits to make love with a woman, and the more that he is willing to show up for her, the more that he values her, and the more that he will open his heart. So masculine energy traditionally is about discipline, and it's about working hard for something and being able to be worthy of it. So for a healthy masculine, it's important for men to be able to show up for women and use their masculine energy to create a safety for her and to create containment for her emotionally. Containment means a safe space for her to share her emotions. And the more that you do this, it's interesting because I am a woman and I am saying this. And so you might think, oh, you're just a woman and you want men to just do things for women. But I'm telling you, from all of the men that I've spoken to about this, they tell me that it activates their masculine energy. So they have more masculine energy the more that they show up for women. So am I saying that all of this stuff needs to be super serious and that you need to have this really long waiting period before you make love? No, I'm not saying that at all. What I'm trying to say is that each relationship and each situation is different. And if we can go into the situation from a really conscious perspective and have conversations before we make love, then we will create a lot of safety on both sides of the dynamic between the man and the woman, or the man and the man, or the woman and the woman. We will create a lot of safety between both parties if we're able to communicate ahead of time. In my opinion, communication is sexy. A lot of people think that bringing up a conversation about what does it mean and what are we doing here before you make love is actually, they think that this is going to kill some of the spiciness that happens in the dynamic. And yeah, maybe that is potentially true, but I will tell you that the opportunity to create safety in the dynamic between you and another person is so much more sexy than a temporary idea that maybe you're going to kill the spice in the dynamic. So you're going to create a lot more long-term spiciness and potential for long-term spiciness. But most importantly, you're going to create safety in your body. Because if someone is not willing to have a conversation with you to create safety before you make love with that person, then you probably should not be making love with that person. I want to really let this one sink in. If someone is not willing to create emotional safety with you by having a conversation before you make love, then that person is probably not someone you should have sex with. So what kind of conversation are we talking about here? What do we mean by this having a conversation and that communication is sexy? So what I mean by this, well, actually, let me just go into the story so that you can understand how I apply all of this. Because the situation where I was almost pregnant was not with someone that I was in a long-term partnership with. It was someone who was a friend of mine, and we had had a lot of conscious communications before we made love. I want to teach you a tool here, so listen up. There is something that you can Google. It's called RBDSM conversation. So I'll say it again, RBDSM. And this is a conversation. A lot of people, when I bring this up, they think, are you talking about when you tie someone up? I'm like, no, I'm not talking about BDSM or kinky. This is a conscious conversation tool called RBDSM. And each of the letters stand for something. So I was in a friendship. I'm going to call him Jake. So Jake and I have been friends for about a year. He came to the island last high season. I met him and we stayed friends. We were over the year, and then he came back this last high season, this last winter, to Koh Phangan. And we got closer and closer, and then it came up with this situation where we were both like, do we want to make this friendship into something more, into something romantic, into something sexual? And I asked him if we could have this conversation. And I'm going to go into the tool now, but what ended up happening with him, first I want to say that what ended up happening with him is after we had this conversation, we decided that at that moment, it wasn't a good time to have sex with each other, that we should just stay friends. And I am so happy that we had that conversation in that moment, because if we had made love without having that conversation, one or both of us would have eventually had this conversation later on, and we would have felt uneasy about the situation. So it could have potentially dissolved our friendship that we had. So what does RBDSM stand for? The R stands for relationship status. So first off, what you can do, this is what I do with every potential lover that I have, is I say to them, in order for me to feel safe to make love with you, I need to have a 5-minute conversation first. And this is not something I made up. This is something that's normal in the conscious community. So it's like, you can say to them, like, this is not like, I'm not just like, picking this up out of nowhere. This is a normal thing that people do in the world, and I would like to do this with you. And this is what I need in order to have safety in my body, to have the potential to make love with you. So then you both talk about it and you go over these. And again, you can Google this. It's RBDSM. So the first one, the R, is the relationship status. So both of you will share, what is your current relationship status? And so for me and Jake, it was both that we were single. For some people, it could be that they're in a monogamous relationship. They could be married. They could be in a polyamorous relationship. All of these things are really good to know before you make love with someone. So boundaries. What are your boundaries if we make love? Is there certain things you are not okay with? So with Jake and I, we had certain boundaries that we needed in the dynamic, like, I'm not going to go into them, but like there were certain things that each of us were okay with. We had a certain boundary around that we didn't want. And the next one is D, which is desires. So what do you desire out of the sexual connection? Is there certain things that you are craving or fantasizing about? And how can we fulfill this? Is this something that we want to fulfill together in a sexual connection? So R, B, D, and then S is sexual health. So this is like, when was the last time you were tested to make sure that you have no sexually transmitted diseases? And, it's, do you normally have sex without condoms? And different things that around sexual health, which is, again, it might sound like it's like not sexy to talk about, but I will tell you that it creates so much safety in your body to know when was the last time your potential lover was tested for STDs. And in today's world, this is a really important thing to start talking about. And then the last one is the RBDSM. So the M is meaning. So what does it mean if we make love right now? What will it mean afterwards? So is this a casual thing? Are you looking for a relationship? Are you, what do you need after this? So some people also have aftercare. So like for some people, what they need is a text message the next day, a message from the person, from the guy to the woman, like, how are you feeling? Are you okay? Or just back and forth, like just some conversation to make sure there's integration. So when I had this conversation with Jake, what we realized was that I was in a place where I hadn't made love with someone for 5 months. And so for me, I was really being cautious and protective over my sexual energy and who I shared it with. And I wasn't necessarily looking for a life partner in Jake. We both knew that we were not each other's life partner, at least not in this moment. And I was open to the idea of a life partner or open to the idea of a lover. So someone who is my friend, a man who shows up for me, uses his energy to protect and provide for me, and just like feels safe to be around. And for me in that moment, safety meant, in that moment when we first had that initial conversation, safety meant that neither of us were wanting to necessarily sleep with other people. We weren't open. We weren't searching for other explorations. So if we were to make love with each other, what it meant for me in that moment was we are going to drop into a lovership with each other. So that doesn't mean that we're still open to potential other connections if they happen, but we will talk about it with each other, and we will, consider the other person. And honestly, what I said to him, I was like, I'm focusing all of my energy into building what I'm meant to birth into the world. My house of pleasure and the vanilla play parties and all of my online offerings that I have, I've just like inside of me, and they need to come out. I do not have energy to be in a polyamorous situation where I'm dating you and then you're dating other people. And it's totally okay if you are in that dynamic where it's what we call solo poly, where you're an individual and you want to just like be exploring many different people and have it be all above board and talk about it. And that was more of the dynamic that he was in. He was like, I'm here to explore. I want to open up my sexuality. I want to learn things, and I want to do this through whatever connections are flowing into my life in this moment. And he was more open to either, I don't think he was necessarily like, I need this. He wasn't like needy with it, but he was like, I'm open to whatever's flowing in, and I it's something that I want to focus on right now while I'm on the island. And I said to him, that's amazing. I'm so happy for you. I've been in those moments many times in my life. And right now for me, it's just not one of those moments. And I was so happy that we had this conversation before we made love. Because if we had made love and then we'd had this conversation, I would have felt like, oh, now my energy is open to you. And now your energy is open to everyone else. And so what I said to him, I was like, I've learned over, having many solo poly situations where I'm just dating myself, but having many lovers, or in open relationships where me and my partner are sharing our energy with other people, is whoever you are connecting with sexually. So say him and I are in a lovership and then he's having an external connection with another woman. All three of us are sharing energy. And this is maybe where we get into more of a energetic, spiritual perspective on this conversation. But I just know that in my body at that moment, I didn't want to deal with that. That was like, I didn't want to process that. I understand what it's like to be in polyamorous type situations. It is so much emotional processing, and I did not have energy for that at that moment. I wanted to focus all of that on what I was birthing into the world. So anyways, we decided to just stay friends. And we even had a couple nights where we cuddled and like spent the night at each other's houses, and it was really beautiful. Lots of oxytocin, the happy drug, being released by cuddling without, needing to have a sexual release that happens. And also something else I said to him was, from a cultural perspective, we all desire different things and what it means to have someone show up for us. So within the dynamic with him, I will just speak from my perspective. I'm from California. I grew up in a very traditional environment where I grew up in a religious environment. My dad was the one who made the money in the family and provided for us financially, physically, all the things. I have run away from this in my life of thinking that this is what a man is, and I went out and I made the money for myself. I took care of myself. And now I have come full circle to realize what actually literally creates safety in my body is when I am out with a man and I do not have to think about the physical reality. I can just be fully in my feminine and receive. So I said this to him also in this conversation. I said there's been times where, we're cuddling and we're having this really, it's getting juicy, but we didn't end up making love type of situation. And then we go out and we go get a coffee and we're standing at the counter and he doesn't pay for me. And I said to him, I was like, there's nothing wrong with this. This also could be a cultural thing. We're from different countries. But for me, in my culture and the way I was raised and what actually feels good in my body is that a man is willing when we're in public to take care of me physically. And again, like, I can pay for the coffee myself. I can pay for the villa myself. I can take care of myself financially. But in order for my body to feel like energetically and emotionally safe, and again, I think this goes back to the biological question that we're always asking is, can this person be the father of my children? And if that man is not willing to buy me a cup of coffee, then I do not feel from a biological standpoint that this person is willing and able to be the father of my children. And it was super interesting to hear his perspective, because he was like, in my country, Germany, where he comes from, if it's like very normal for each person to pay for themselves. And also he's had times in the past where women have gotten upset at him for paying, as if he's taking away their freedom or their autonomy or sovereignty or something. And I was like, oh, I'm so happy we're having this conversation, because this makes me feel a lot more understanding of where you're coming from. And he was like, yeah, and this makes me feel a lot more understanding of where you're coming from, because of course I want to buy you a cup of coffee or like whatever. I want to make you feel safe and taken care of, because I care about you, even as a friend and as a potential lover. And if that's what like creates that energy response in you of safety, then of course I want to do that for you. And I was like, this made me feel really good. This conversation itself made me feel so good, because we understood where we were at. And even though we decided to not make love at that time, it created a deeper bond between us, because we had gone through this experience together and really were able to be vulnerable with each other, both of us. And especially for a man in that perspective, in order to have a safe space to be vulnerable with their feelings, like, wow, that is such a beautiful thing for a man to be able to experience. So a couple weeks go by, and I'm hosting the play parties. He is very helpful for me. Like, he's still one of my very close friends. He's always helping me with everything. Like, sometimes I think I was sick one time. He brought me food and took care of me and like put on a movie, and we cuddled. And there was just a lot of times where I felt like he would message me and just check on me. So consistent action over time of him showing up. And this went on for like maybe 2 months. And then, and he also went through his own exploration with other women, and then we came, I don't even know how, I don't remember how, but we came back into more intimate connection of like hanging out at my house and just talking about what we wanted to be for each other. And he said to me, like, I've had some situations where I made love with women, and I actually thought I didn't actually need to make love with that person, or, you know, it ended up not being exactly what they were wanting out of the connection, what he was wanting out of the connection. And he was saying to me, like, yeah, not on purpose, but I've been kind of celibate for like the last month, because I've just been paying attention to where I'm putting my energy. And I said, okay, well, what does that mean for you? And he was like, well, if you're interested in having a lovership, I basically would love to have one with you where we're just focusing on each other. And I'm only here for another couple of weeks on the island before I go back to Germany. And I was like, yeah, that sounds nice. Actually, like, I'm still celibate. I haven't had sex for almost 6 months now. And I felt so safe in my body around him. And so we ended up making love and had a beautiful lovership for a couple of weeks. And again, we had already communicated that we were not each other's life partners, but we loved each other. And also, if other people came into our vortex, into our reality, that were potential life partners or people that we wanted to date, then it was really important that we had a safe space to express this to each other. Knowing that we would always be friends, no matter whether we were making love or not. And this is where I find it to be so beautiful, is that when you are so connected to someone that you're like, making love with you is just one more layer of how much I love you. And it doesn't take away from anything, and it doesn't create even more attachment. But the only way that you can do this is if you have a lot of communication and you actually are honest with yourself and you're not just saying something so that the other person feels good. You have to be authentic and actually be all the way through being authentic with what you need and your desire and your boundaries. And if it's all in alignment, oh my goodness, you can have such beautiful dynamics with people where you're making love, and then because you trust each other, you trust yourself and you trust each other. So he ends up leaving the island, and my boobs start to get bigger and more sensitive, and I start to get more emotional. And I also, I mean, at the same time, there was a situation with my villa where it was getting to be stressful. The living situation I was living in started to not feel safe for me anymore. So there was external stress already happening. There was invitations for me to come to Europe and expand the play parties here and have business investment in my company. So there was like so many things happening in my vortex. I was basically like going from, I'm going to live on the island at least for another year. I have a contract until the end of November with my villa, to I might be pregnant. I have to move out of my villa in 2 weeks, and I have investment for my company. So I might be moving to Europe and then LA. So all of this was happening within the span of a week. And to the point where sometimes I forgot that I might be pregnant, and then it just kept going. And I thought, okay. So I messaged Jake and I was like, this is what's, again, clear communication. Old me would have just waited till I went and got a pregnancy test before I talked to him. But I wanted him to be part of the story all the way through. So I called him and I said, hey, this is what's happening. And he was like, okay, I'm here. I'm grounded. Like, I'm here through all of it. Like, what would you want to do if you ended up being pregnant? And I said to him, I do not feel like right now, we've already talked about this. Like, right now is not a time for either of us to be having a baby. Also, I grew up in an environment where abortion is like in my religious environment, abortion is such a negative thing. It is like such a, like, you're going to go to hell kind of thing. So I was like, let's cross that bridge when we get to it. I want to deal with that decision, but I want to do it together. But what I'm feeling right now is I do not want to have a kid. And he said, yeah, I agree with you. And also I'm happy that we're in this together. So let me know like what happens when the pregnancy test happens. So I went and got a pregnancy test and it was inconclusive. It came out to be as in it was like yes or no. It was like lukewarm, and we had no clue what it meant. And so I messaged him like, yeah, it says inconclusive. And he's like, okay, go get another one. And so I went back and got like another one, and it ended up being a no. And I let, what's interesting is that day there was so many things going on that I was so overwhelmed emotionally that I forgot to tell Jake that I was not pregnant. And then he messaged me like later on in the night and was like, so can you let me know what's going on? I'm actually starting to get worried. Like, I'm concerned for you and for us. And I said to him, oh yeah, sorry. I'm so sorry. I here's the picture. I am not pregnant. And he's like, okay. Like, of course I'm relieved. And also like, basically like I was here with you through the whole thing. So whatever needed to happen, I was going to be there with you on it. And I was like, yeah. And I felt that. And that's also why I felt so safe through the whole thing, because I knew we were going to do it together. And for me, this situation was safe for me because I had already had all of this communication all the way through. If I didn't have any of this communication, it could have potentially been a situation where it broke our friendship. And one or both of us could have contracted emotionally and run away emotionally. And I'm so grateful that, if anything, this is something where we are even stronger together as friends, and something that we can laugh about later on. I don't know if it's something to laugh about quite yet, but later on we can laugh about it. That is a situation that we went through, and we're stronger because of it, because we were able to be on the same team. And so this is where I think it's really important for each one of us all of you who are listening to this, if you take something away from this podcast, if you take one lesson away from this, Communication is super sexy and it creates safety, and it's super important for each of us to do whatever we need and have whatever kind of communication we need in order to feel safe. So that is my story for you. I just want to give you a little catch up on where I'm at in my life. Right now, it is, I'm in Switzerland until Friday, and then I go to Hamburg spontaneously for the weekend to visit a close friend of mine. And then I go to Berlin on, I think, Monday. And I'm super excited. I'm going to be hosting a sisterhood circle on the 16th. I don't even know what day that is, but it's like what day of the week. Let me just check. Next Wednesday. So 1 week from today, I'm hosting a sisterhood circle in Berlin. So if you would like to come and hang out live with me and meet all the other beautiful women, that is the time to do that. And then the week after, we're going to do a community event in Berlin. And then the week after that is the play party, April 30th. I'm going to host a play party in Berlin at a very beautiful luxury location with a sauna. So I would love for all of you to come. And some of you have been reaching out asking if I'm still doing coaching or human design readings. And yes, I'm still doing both. I've just had it for a while on pause, and because I was full of clients and also full of life. So now that I have more space, if you are interested in doing any one-on-one coaching with me, or having me give you a human design reading, which is really fun for me, please reach out to me. You can reach out to me on Instagram, and my Instagram's at Brittnee Bond. So lots of fun things to come. I'm super excited for all the adventures ahead, and I will keep you updated every step of the way. I hope you guys have a beautiful day. Bye.